That Jackie and her daughter's relationship was strained. I didn't know to the extent or the degree.
Like the damage that she did to me and my sister's relationship, she won't even take accountability for. At this point, it's just like a fake, I have to keep talking to you so you won't go talk about me on Twitter and talk about me on Facebook and
So you
tell
think
your side of the
genuinely
story.
she doesn't care?
Why else would you speak about your daughter like this?
Let's talk about Doug Christie for a moment. If you know anything about him, you know he's not the type of man who looks for drama. Doug has always been that calm, level-headed person, the one who keeps his emotions in check no matter what's going on around him. He's the guy who walks away instead of shouting, who listens instead of starting fights. But this time, this time was different. Doug snapped. And not just a small raise your voice for a minute kind of thing. No, this was a full-on emotional explosion. When someone like Doug
Give her the opportunity to say everything that she's had to say about me to me. Get bold. You had all of these things to say. Oh, she's a hoe, she's messing with his friend, she's doing this, she's doing that. Say it.
Who's known for keeping his peace and staying composed, suddenly loses control. You know something serious must have happened. This is the same Doug Christie who's built his whole life around loyalty, honesty, and family values. He's always avoided unnecessary drama. But whatever went down this time pushed him way past his limit. So now everyone's asking the same question. Because let's be honest, it takes a lot to get Doug worked up. From the way he reacted, this wasn't some small disagreement. This was deep. Something that shook him to his very core. And once you hear what happened, it'll all start to make sense. Before Doug completely lost it, he already felt that something wasn't right. You know that gut feeling you get when things seem off, but you can't quite explain why. That's exactly what Doug was feeling. And when a calm, observant man like him starts to feel uneasy, it usually means something big is brewing. At first, it started with little things.
I came here because you brought the friend into the situation. So I just want you to tell me, face to face, that it was the friend that I was with.
Especially with Jackie, his wife. Doug knows Jackie better than anyone. They've been through everything together. So he could immediately tell when her behavior started to change. She began avoiding certain conversations, acting overly protective of her phone, and moving around like she had something to hide. Doug didn't want to assume the worst, but he couldn't ignore what he was seeing either. Because when someone starts acting that secretive, it's usually because there's something they don't want you to find out. Then there was Chantel, their daughter. She wasn't acting like herself either. Doug noticed she was getting nervous over small questions, giving vague answers, and sometimes even slipping up when talking. It was like she was trying way too hard to seem normal. And if you know Doug, you know one thing about him. He may stay quiet, but he's always paying attention. So he started watching more closely, connecting the dots. The signs were all there. Something was definitely going on. One afternoon, while Doug was going about his day, he came across something that stopped him cold, a DNA test. His first thought was confusion. Who took this? And more importantly, why? Then he looked closer and saw the name on it, Chantel. For a few seconds, he just stared at it, almost hoping he was imagining things. Why would there be a secret DNA test in his own house with his daughter's name on it? And when he saw the results, his stomach dropped. The answer on that paper wasn't what he expected, not even close. That's when everything clicked. Someone had been keeping a massive secret from him. Not just a little white lie, but something that could shake the entire foundation of their family. Doug's mind started racing with questions, and he knew he needed answers immediately. Now, Doug is not the type of man who lets things slide, especially when it involves his family. Once he connected the pieces, he didn't wait around. He went straight to the source. He walked right up to Chantel, put the DNA test in front of her.
Disgusting. It's disgusting. It makes me sick.
She said a lot of things that actually hurt my feelings as a mom.
And said calmly but firmly. The room fell silent. Chantel looked down at the paper, then back at Doug, then back at the paper again. Like maybe, just maybe, the words would somehow change if she looked long enough. But they didn't, and then she went quiet, completely silent. If you've ever asked someone a direct question and they hesitate before answering, you already know what that means. That pause.
Have this castle and this man and this blended family. Go fix it. Go fix dinner. Why are you here?
That tiny hesitation is guilt trying to hide in plain sight. Doug saw it instantly. He folded his arms, leaned forward slightly, and said in that deep, serious father voice that could silence an entire room, you could have heard a pin drop. Chantel looked terrified. She knew she couldn't talk her way out of this one. Doug wasn't letting it go, and she had no excuses ready. Before Chantel could even speak, Jackie came rushing into the room like she already knew what was happening. She moved quickly, almost like she was trying to stop something before it exploded. Doug turned his head slowly toward her, confused. That's when it clicked. He looked her straight in the eye and asked, "So, you knew about this?" Jackie froze. The guilt was written all over her face. She tried to explain, stuttering, searching for the right words, but Doug didn't need to hear any more. Her silence told him everything. Doug's anger was already boiling, but realizing his wife, the person he trusted most, was part of this secret too, that sent him over the edge. He looked at her and asked in a low, controlled voice. Jackie hesitated, tried to avoid the question, tried to delay it, but Doug wasn't having it. He kept pressing her, his patience wearing thinner by the second. Finally, she broke. She said the name, and the moment she did, Doug's entire world seemed to freeze. His face went blank. He didn't shout, didn't speak. He just stood there, trying to process what he had just heard. Then it hit him. Hard. He took a step back, fists clenched, jaw tight. He started pacing, breathing heavily, trying to hold himself together. Because this wasn't just a small betrayal. This was something that changed everything. Doug's whole world had just flipped upside down. Everything he thought he knew about his family, gone in seconds. And just when it couldn't get worse, Chantel broke down. She started crying, not a few tears, but full, uncontrollable sobs. She buried her face in her hands, gasping between words, trying to explain through her tears. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I never wanted it to come out this way. But Doug wasn't in the mood for explanations. He looked at her, took a deep breath, and said the one thing that hurt more than any yelling ever could. You had all this time to tell me the truth, and you waited until I found out myself. The room fell silent again. Chantel shook her head, still crying, but Doug wasn't moved. You don't accidentally hide something like this for years, he said. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Now Jackie was crying too, saying, Doug, please, I can explain. But Doug didn't want to hear it. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was years of lies, years of secrets, years of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. He looked at the two people he loved most in the world, his wife and his daughter, and felt a kind of heartbreak he'd never known before. Then, without another word, Doug turned around and walked away. And in that silence, you could feel everything. The disappointment, the heartbreak, the loss of trust. For the first time in his life, Doug didn't know if he could ever forgive them. What happened that day didn't just break Doug's heart, it broke his trust completely. This wasn't something that could be fixed with an apology or a promise. This was a betrayal that had been hidden for years. Doug had always believed that family was everything. He gave them his loyalty, his patience, and his love. But now, that same family had kept something huge from him, something that changed the way he saw them forever. His relationship with Chantel was damaged. His trust in Jackie was shattered. And now, Doug had to decide whether he could ever move forward, or if this was simply too much to come back from. Because sometimes, no matter how strong you are, some wounds cut too deep to ever fully heal. When the story got out, people had strong reactions. One person commented, Doug walking away instead of exploding just shows how broken he is. That silence says it all. Another wrote, Jackie's tears don't mean anything now. She had years to tell the truth and didn't. She's only sorry because she got caught. A third person added, Doug deserves better. He's always been about family first, and this is what they did to him. That's heartbreaking. And honestly, that's what it comes down to. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it comes from the people you'd least expect. Now the real question is, should Doug forgive them? Can something like this ever be repaired? Or are some betrayals simply too deep to recover from? And what about Chantel? Was she completely at fault? Or did Jackie's choices put her in a position where she couldn't win? If Jackie had just told the truth from the start, would things have been different? Could this family have avoided all this pain? No one knows for sure. But one thing's clear. Doug Christie will never look at his family the same way again. Because once trust is broken, even if you rebuild it, the cracks never fully disappear.